Evening, Graham.
Hello,
Good evening.
Charles.
Good evening, Anthony. Welcome to a gorgeous Sunday night. It must be said, Yorkshire at its most beautiful today, and which leads us straight away to thinking about things overseas. In the past, at a famous Pompeii with a
Oh,
certain
yeah.
Pink Floyd live in Pompeii. Now,
Mm.
subject of a documentary, and we've touched upon a couple of rock documentaries recently, ones that I'd seen. This is one that I haven't yet seen, but it was a significant concert in its time. The unpredictability of it, the huge scale of it, typical of Pink Floyd. And lo and behold, now it comes out as a documentary. But above all, and I like your thought on this, your subheading here is when rock was classical music. And that
Mm.
seems absolutely right, that suggestion. But what made you think that?
I've seen the film numerous times over the years. And when I first saw it, it didn't seem that outlandish. It
Mm,
wasn't far enough away, even though it was 20 years after it happened, for me to think this looks really weird. But seeing it again for the first time on the big screen, restored and remastered and remixed, it had a different effect entirely from any previous times because Pink Floyd may be there on their own in the middle of the Roman amphitheatre in Pompeii playing on sand to empty terraces in a magnificent vista. Two of them bare chested, all of them with long hair,
yeah,
looking like the quintessential early 1970s, let's let it all hang out type
yeah.
hippie band. That's what comes across at a quick look at it. But
Do we
when you
know
watch
why
it,
they chose to play without any audience? Was it just practical, more practical and easier? But given where they were, they probably couldn't have
I
got
would have
permission to
thought
have a full audience there.
yeah, it'd be cheaper and easier. But I think
Yeah,
mainly that being Pink Floyd had unusual things. They used to do live. They would play the music at a ballet live on stage.
yeah.
They'd do strange shows at the Albert Hall where they'd use like kitchen utensils and bits of found sound. They were
Mm,
in those days before they were mega successful, although they were popular. They had number one albums even after
yeah,
Sid Barrett left, but they
yeah.
weren't a huge band really. So
No.
they used to like do any gig going, and they like to spice it up and make themselves different by doing slightly odd things. So to them, the idea of playing in the amphitheater with an audience would have seemed a bit ridiculous. In
Yes.
the impact of them being on their own, it's almost like they're ghosts in time. Like they're
Mm,
there from the past playing modern music as it was then, but they're not really there at all. So it gives it a slightly ghostly, even though there's like, two guys with bare chested, there's a sort of ghostly effect of it. So, and the director, a young French guy, Adrian Mabin, it was his idea. He would have thought
mm.
that because a lot of the direction and the camera movements are completely stolen from Jean-Luc Godard films in the 1960s. A lot of slow
Ah,
camera pans, spiced up by striking visuals and sudden jump cuts to like the Floyd walking across lava fields at Mount Etna,
mm.
or is it not? It's Vesuvius actually, and like lava bubbling up in Roman sort of like frescoes
Yeah,
intercut with them playing their music. So it's a really powerful mix of imageries and ideas, and it's a real powerful mix of like the present and the past. And it gives it a sort of classical feel, even when you're not listen, even if you don't listen to the music, it feels like this is a band that's linked to history. So the whole thing works. It's a bit like because they weren't big, it was a gamble on their part to raise their profile. A bit like when U2 in the 80s did the live show at Red Rocks
oh
in
yes.
Colorado. They had to
Mm.
borrow an arm and leg to do that. It was a hugely expensive gig to do. They had no American hits. They weren't even that big in Britain when
Nope.
they did that, but they knew when they did that gig and filmed it and then flogged it around the world on TV and did the live album, the striking images of them in such a magnificent setting would create a different image of the band and
Yeah.
really give their career a huge boost, which of course it did. And Live at Pompeii was the same sort of thing. Like this is proof that the Floyd are an important band because who else would do such a daring, slightly strange, original live film as Pink Floyd? So that comes across without any thinking whatsoever.
Without an audience there, the interaction of the band becomes solely what it is. So that they're not playing off an audience. they're playing off where they are, but I guess above all, they're playing off the musicians together in an extraordinary ancient site. How did that impact upon the way they played?
Well, first of all, they're still getting on as individuals. You can
Good to
feel
hear.
the chemistry between the four of them. So
Yeah.
that comes across on the big screen and the way they film it, it comes across.
Mm.
And then it intercuts with footage of them in Abbey Road Studios recording the early versions of Dark Side of the Moon, which would totally transform their career
Yeah.
and which would make them one of the biggest bands on the planet. And in a way, this is a film of them at their musical peak before fame made them a different band because none of the songs are commercial. None of the songs are
No.
even vaguely, hummable. They're not made for like American radio. They're long, sort of like meandering, very intense space rock numbers, which
Yeah.
of course creates a great atmosphere with the visuals in the Roman amphitheater at Pompeii. But the film is the last time to be like that because once Dark Side of the Moon's a hit, they do not play like that. They do not write music like that. They move on completely. So it's capturing them almost as people and musicians, almost at their best, despite the fact it's definitely not a greatest hits film.
So I've not seen it, but from the trailer, it looks like they were playing daytime rather than nighttime. Is that right or wrong?
Well, having watched it quite a few times, but always on Blu-ray or originally I watched it on VHS video.
Yeah.
I had no idea that the scenes shot at night
Yeah.
in darkness, apart from a whole sea of bright lights behind the band,
Mm.
they were actually filmed in a studio in Paris later. There's
Really?
only about 25 minutes, half an hour actually in Pompeii, and that is all in daylight. Again, obviously, because that would have been cheaper to film in
Cheap to
daylight than
film, yeah.
bring in huge number of lights, whereas the Paris studio shots could be done quite cheaply as well.
Mm.
So yeah, it is mainly in daylight. But the
Of
thing you
course.
notice when you watch them playing together is that
Mm.
this is a band who are musically very ambitious, who construct songs like they're symphonies,
Yeah.
except it's based on rock music
Mm.
and the blues and a bit of electronic ambient.
Mm.
And they take the music really seriously. They're not trying to be pop stars. They're not trying to make you like them. They're there playing serious music with great skill, great concentration, great intensity. And they behave exactly like classical musicians would behave
Mhm.
if they had long hair, bare chests, and flared trousers. But of course, classical musicians don't wear dress like that now. And in the early 1970s, classical musicians in general looked down their noses at rock music, so they wouldn't have behaved like that in the first place.
No.
But Pink Floyd, at that point where what classical music was going to become, although looking at the lineup for the proms, it's back in retreat again because the days of classical music embracing avant-garde rock
Mm.
and minimalism, that phase seems to have ended, and classical music now links up with popcorn movie soundtracks and quite hummable pop. It doesn't do anything ambitious for rock anymore. So this is from the days when rock got influenced by classical music
Mm.
and challenged classical music to become more interesting.
Which Rick Wakeman did, of course, as well. You would have to say.
Exactly, yeah. So it's like you realize now, all these years later, much more than I realized 20 years ago, that this concert, this sort of band,
Mm.
could not exist anymore. Does
No.
not exist, could not exist. Their whole attitude towards creation and being rock stars is completely different to anything that exists now.
Is that something to lament? There isn't a comparable ambition out there that, or is that
It
part
is to be
again the
lamented
influence of
because,
record labels that are more restrictive and
well,
bands don't
yeah,
feel they can experiment in the way that they did at this time?
yeah, well, after Sid Barrett left, like Sid had brought them a couple of hit singles before he left the
Yeah.
band. And they
Mm.
were signed to EMI, Parlophone. So they're a big label. They have
Yeah.
a couple of hits. Sid leaves the band. The hits dry up. And yet the label doesn't ditch Pink Floyd in the 1960s. It only doesn't ditch them when they record Atom Heart Mother, which has a one side long track with an orchestra.
Yeah.
The front cover of Atom Heart Mother not only doesn't have the title of the album or the name of the band, the front cover of that album of 1970 is just a giant picture of cows in a field.
I thought
Now nowadays, there's
I was
absolutely no
visualizing it as you were
way.
describing it. And
Yeah,
absolutely. So
nowadays there's no way
no,
that any of that would happen.
no.
None of it. And Pink Floyd themselves would be so cynical that if they did use a picture of cows in a field,
Mm,
it'd be some marketing strategy that they could tie into Instagram and memes and
yeah.
TikTok and generate some viral spread of the name based on the fact that they've got this. Oh, look at this album! It's got a big cow in the front. Isn't that funny? That's how it'd be. They wouldn't do it for artistic reasons anymore
No.
because everybody's more savvy about how the game is played. Pink Floyd at Pompeii comes from the days when bands were self-confident enough in their own importance to not play the game, to push and bend the rules with joy and with verve, and that
Mm.
does not happen anymore.
When did this film first come out then?
1972.
So, so it wasn't one of those things that was just stored away. It actually did have its
No,
moment at the time of
no.
creation. Yes.
Yeah, it played in double bills usually with another film, and it quite often played in university towns in America and Britain as a
Mm.
late night film. So, in the days when art house cinemas really took off in the 1970s, students would quite often got a film start at 11 o'clock at night and it'd be live at Pompeii.
Oh, see, I've never seen it. I mean, I've heard of it, but I've still never seen it. But I'm
Well,
going to
by
try and
the
remember
80s, it
that.
was forgotten about.
Yeah.
It wasn't looked on by any music critic as being of
No.
any interest whatsoever in the 1980s. It only started to revive an interest in the 90s once the new version of Pink Floyd without Roger Waters
Mm.
started to be hugely popular. There was a bit more interest in 70s Floyd again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was never regarded as a classic film till recently, really.
So the filmmaker, or more significantly, is it a sound engineer that's improved the quality of what we listen to in the film, or actually are the visuals have the visuals been improved as well, or
Yeah, the visuals
re-edited as
are
well?
being totally restored, so the
Yes.
colors are way better, and you
Ah,
can see
okay.
the studio footage much better, and it's
Yeah.
more it comes alive. It was always a slightly murky, and
Mm.
all that's gone. It's all very colorful, very clear, in your
Yeah.
face. It works much better, and the sound's fantastic. It's been
Mhm.
thoroughly remixed by one of those people that always remixes these things like Beatles albums, etc.
Yes. Yeah.
And on the speakers in the Everyman and Harrogate, the actual use of the sound on the various speakers inside the auditorium
Mm.
were really good. It was like, wow, this is fantastic sound. And I'm not usually into like quadraphonics or IMAX or any of the sort of gimmicks you get in
No.
cinemas, but
No.
live at Pompeii really works, the
Mm.
new version in a decent cinema.
Well, I'm glad that you had a far better documentary cinematic experience in Everyman than I did with Neil Young's Coastal, but we won't revisit that. I feel it's time, Graham, for a quick interruption because you've met an assistant manager, not a manager, but an assistant manager of the one of the founding football teams of English football, Notts County, and this was at the final Harrogate Town Home match this season, where of course Harrogate Town have managed to. Well, it's actually, I think they just steered clear of relegation throughout. They were
Yeah,
just
they
always just
flirted with the
above.
idea of it about February time, but only
Mm,
the idea. They were never in the bottom two.
no.
They were never even, I think they were only third or fourth bottom for 1 week or
Mm,
less. So they haven't really flirted badly with it, but they have flirted a little bit with it. But yeah, I bring this up not because I'm going to talk about football or make
no.
this podcast and it's sort of like two
Yeah.
egos in a large car going to a football match because we talk about enough already without bringing in football.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
another. It's another. It could have been an embarrassing moment. So I have to say
That's
that
what I
it
had.
wasn't
I
an
had a
embarrassing
feeling
moment.
this story might go
Yeah,
that way.
it could. It could have been hugely embarrassing because we're in the corporate area at Harrogate Town, small ground
Small.
after the last match of the
Very
season at
small.
home.
Mm,
And the captain of the Harrogate Town, Joss Falkingham, who was born in Leeds,
yeah.
played for Leeds United's youth
He
team,
did.
then
Yes.
went to Scotland, captain Dunfermline. So he probably beat Falkirk, my hometown team. But he has retired from football, or rather playing football,
Yeah.
after 8 seasons at Harrogate Town. He's the guy who scored the winning goal for Harrogate Town when they won the FA Trophy at Wembley a couple of years ago.
Indeed.
So, which
Indeed.
is a huge thing for Harrogate Town in their history. So
Mm,
it was his last game. So they did a lap around after the game. Then he
yeah.
came back at the corporate area after the match, and there was like a big video tribute. And for once after the game, all the players were in the corporate area and their families and everybody else. It was all
Mm.
crowded. It was
And Graham Chalmers.
a real memorable,
Mm,
quite emotional atmosphere. But at one point, myself and a friend found ourselves talking to a young chap who was clearly from Notts County.
Yes.
And he was so young, very pleasant, very clean cut, likable young guy. We assumed he was a coach
Yeah.
because he was just wearing like a Notts County, very tidy tracksuit.
Mm.
And so we were nice as pie because the last thing you want to do when you're at Harrogate Town is in any way be not nice to the opponents,
Exactly.
officials, and committee members and club people
Yeah.
because it has an impact on Harrogate Town. So we said all the right things to him. We were nice as pie about Notts County. Even though Notts County had won 3-1, we said they were a good team and we
Yeah.
enjoyed watching them. And then my friend said to him, and I've been thinking this already, but I thought I'm not going to mention this because I think this guy isn't just a junior coach or a physio. So my friend said, and what did you do? And I thought, this is going to go
Oh
badly wrong here.
no.
And he paused and said, I'm assistant manager. And I thought, thank goodness we were so nice to him.
Oh dear. And
for
so
for all the
so
world, he looked like the
yeah.
physio. So, but we steered clear of it. But I would not have asked him what he did.
Did
I
you
was
ever
assuming
ascertain what his
because
name was?
no, that did not happen. So I have
And
to
that's still the
apologise to Notts
case.
County and to
Neither
him.
you nor I, in researching for our two big egos, have sought out to find out the name of this
Well,
assistant.
we don't want to embarrass him or ourselves.
No, okay, that's fine. And so that's a brief diversion into into not spotting someone's. Yeah, obviously, I mean, I guess if they're there they are on the bench, you're not going to necessarily work out who they are apart from the manager because they're
Well,
all.
especially since the bench is the opposite side to where I was sitting, so I needed
Yes,
binoculars.
exactly, exactly.
But I did fear for one moment when my friend said, "And what do you do?" When he said that, it was
Yeah,
a sudden
it's
little
not good.
outburst of
It's not a good
silence.
moment.
I thought he's going to say chief executive or chairman. I thought this is going to go hideously wrong here. So I was
Well,
almost
I'm
relieved
glad
that he said
that you
assistant
managed to
manager.
steer clear of that. So, Graham, we'll come on to the murder capital shortly, but obviously, the big talking point here in York, and has been ever since this was announced, it was announced October last year, that Gary Oldman would be returning to the city where he made his professional debut, the tradition of repertory theatre, which is largely it's fair to say largely gone actually. So what Gary did, he did 9 shows there in
He was
1979.
last there in 1979, wasn't he, or
Yep.
something like that?
So
Mm.
1979, and it finished. The last hurrah there was as the pantomime cat in Berwick Kaler's pantomime, and
Wow.
of course Gary's gone on to this remarkable career, and so but he's always felt that connection. As this was where after being at Rose Bruford College, he made that connection, and he talks about a completion of a cycle in returning to York. And as we understand it, it seems to be that only York this is only where he will do the show. We won't go on elsewhere. So, and it's gone through that London style process of having a week of previews, and then that, and more unusually for anything that's up here in Yorkshire, effectively a week of press shows. So from Tuesday onwards through to Saturday night, there were members of the press going. I think it's common knowledge now that amongst them, apparently, a New York Times. So that doesn't often
Very
happen
good. Very impressive indeed.
at York Theatre Royal. So, and
Mm.
then come midnight of last night into this morning, in the early hours of the morning, the early minute of the morning, the first minute of the morning, we could all put our reviews online. And I don't know if anyone actually stayed up to read them at that time of night. But anyway, they were
Yeah.
available from then on to read the reviews. The Guardian has used the word startling. So I haven't quite used the word startling. That's not that
Yeah, but
I.
Charles, I think the important point to make here, Charles, is that
Yes,
first of all, I wasn't there. But secondly,
yes.
you were there. And
So
the
I was
reason you
there.
were there is because you have written more reviews about more theatre shows
Yeah,
in more places of Yorkshire
yeah.
for the last 40 years than any person alive. So
Apart from
you
Phil
were there
Penfold, I
because
always have to say this
you
to
are
Graham.
an
Phil
important
Penfold and
theatre
Steve
critic
Pratt
in your own
between
right.
them. Phil and
Mm.
Steve between them have covered an awful lot of theatre as well. I mean, that's why it, of course, thankfully, press was still being able to see the show. It's going to be very interesting to know whether we're going to be able to get to see Jodie Comer next year in Prima Facie or not. I mean, there's been no announcement yet. This is, of course, coming to the Grand Opera House in York, completely sold out. So I have had no indication from the theatre whether critics will be allowed in for that. And thank you, Gary, actually, for giving a full week of opportunity for critics to see the show. And I think that's admirable that he did that. So,
Charles, but
yeah,
I'd like to interject here.
yes.
What was it like?
So,
How was he?
well, now this is the interesting thing because he's playing a downbeat character who's at a low ebb.
Right, slow
This
horses.
character is 69. What happens in
Mm,
Krapp's last tape? It's actually arguably one of the most coherent of or
yeah,
most rounded of pieces by Samuel Beckett, who obviously
least
writes and
existential.
it's still existential. It is, of course, it
Mm,
is still that, absolutely. But actually, I think you can, in the way that maybe some pieces are more baffling by him, you can follow the journey. What happens in this, the reason it's Krapp's last tape is that every year, on his birthday for 30 years, he has recorded tapes. And he starts off by, well, actually, he starts off by entering with a cough. Which indeed, that's my only comparison in my career with on stage with Gary Oldman, is I made my entrance with a cough as a schoolboy in my debut
deliberately.
at Bramcote School at the age of 10.
Was that deliberate or an accident?
Little did I know that I was going to, in fact, be much of the talent that was drained from me, obviously in that very moment. That was the apex of my career, a cough on stage. So it starts with him. It's silence apart from a cough. He proceeds to eat bananas. And so you've got this typical Beckett from that point of view. You're waiting for things to happen. There's a kind of sense of inaction. And then when it
Yeah.
does start happening, it's actually him listening to his recorded voice from 30 years ago. Before, ultimately, in the piece, he is recording on his 69th birthday, his very final, his valedictory tape. And he's looking back at the tape from 30 years ago when he's boasting about his Lothario prowess. He's boasting about how talented he is as a writer. These things, his ambitions have crashed by the time he's 69. For Gary to be doing it, it's mainly because he's more than 30 years on from when he was last on stage. But it's a chance for him in his own way to reflect and to look back. And one of the joys in the piece.
On top of that, Charles, every famous film actor these days wants to be on the stage again. They've all gone back to theatre.
So this is a very good call. I mean, to the extent that Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter are going to do Beckett's Waiting for Godot
No way.
on Broadway. No way, dude. Of course, it's being called Bill and Ted's
Dear, oh
Existential.
dear.
It's brilliant. Bill and Ted's Existential Adventure.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
Bill and
perfect.
Ted's reunion film that came out
Yeah,
about 5 years ago,
it
about
did.
4 years ago, was frankly rubbish.
Yes, but I have a feeling that this won't be rubbish because I think one of the things that's interesting is that
Better
actors
script.
want to do proper plays. If you look at who's done this play over the years, it started. Patrick McGee did the original production in
Yeah.
1958, but
Max Wall.
number of famous actors have done it. Interestingly, the tape machine, the reel-to-reel tape machine that he uses, was used by John Hurt when he did it. I think he did it in From Memory in Dublin. I think it was Dublin, and
Michael Gambon's done it as well.
yeah, and he did it with the same tape recording machine. So you kind of it's like passing on the baton. You're passing on this tape recording machine. And why would Gary want to do it? Well, because actually it's a fascinating challenge for an actor who hasn't been on stage of any. Well, now originally I thought it was 1987, but I'm then looking at the program notes. They've now said no, actually it was last on stage in 1989. But even then, that's a long time. So to reintroduce yourself to the stage, I thought it was a really canny move.
That's about 3 years after he played Sid Vicious. So that's a long time ago.
Yeah, 86 he played Sid Vicious, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's a 55-minute piece. He directs himself. He's done the stage design himself. And of course, he's playing the character himself. And so he can be completely in control of the experience, just working off himself. And so I thought that was a very clever thing to do. Plus, the fact that there's such a litany of performers that have played this role. So it's interesting. On my website, I wrote a preview of it, and attached at the bottom, when I went back to it, were 3 comments, as before reviews were allowed, about people experiencing the show. One of them was saying to watch a man fiddling with a tape machine, really dull. What came at cost? They spent £400 to come up from London to stay in.
Forgetting about the banana. He also fiddled with banana as well.
The 2.5 bananas that he has. So that was kind of one reaction. Now, the counter reaction from it was about how it's fascinating to watch an actor at the top of his powers, the way he uses his facial expression, the way he uses silence, the way he works with the space, all of which I tended to go more for that view of it. that, I mean, it's a piece that
Well,
I
I was
think,
going to ask Charles
yeah,
if he's not speaking the whole time, or in fact, not even half the time, it relies on his presence.
correct.
You have to be a very good actor to come across well based purely
In
on presence.
in moments of silence and in moments of reflection and in moment and the skill of eating a banana. Well,
Hmm.
interestingly, the debating point was did he peel a banana the correct way?
Oh no, that sounds a bit trivial,
So,
really,
which
for
end do you
Beckett.
peel a banana from,
I have no interest in how I peel a banana. When I
Graham?
peel a
It's
banana, it means nothing to me except I'm going to eat the banana.
okay. I think probably Gary took the same attitude, but
Hmm.
nevertheless, it was a debating point afterwards as to
Oh
whether
dear.
his technique was the.
They may have missed the point, Charles.
It turns out because I was then told, oh no, monkeys do it from one end and not the other. I went to read on the research before my review. I researched this. Monkeys are happy to peel a banana from either end and even squidge it in the
Exactly.
middle.
Yeah, yeah. And at the end of the day, Gary Oldman is not your old school Shakespearean stage actor. He's from a working class background, and
Yeah,
he's not got the attitude of like caring about how he peels a banana. He's not that sort of guy.
Graham. Obviously, I shouldn't be quite so meta obsessed with detail. I take the point, but actually, the strange thing is, as you watch him, you are so aware of detail, so you do note things like that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for the
Well,
reasons that
that's the
you've just said.
yeah,
That if someone isn't saying something and they're listening to themselves on tape, just on the matter of the tapes, interesting. So I was told afterwards that Samuel West has recorded himself doing the role of Krapp's last tape, but not to perform it immediately. So that in
ah,
some years ahead, he will play Krapp using the tape of now as the younger
yeah.
man's voice. Gary freshly recorded, so he's doing two different voices: the voice of a man 30
Okay,
years ago,
okay.
a much
Yeah,
more
yeah, yeah.
arrogant,
Yeah, yeah.
bragging man, and then this weaker voiced man who
Mm,
delights only in the word spool and the way he says the word spool.
mm, mm,
Everything else is
mm.
utter frustration for him.
Yeah.
So again, that is the kind of detail that Gary put into it, and I think I actually think I prefer the idea that that's as part of the acting challenge. It is to do the two different voices. I think that's right to do it like that.
Yeah, one interesting thing I'd say is that when it comes to Beckett's plays and those sort of existential dramas where nothing
Mm,
very much happens, the effect on the audience is pretty similar to minimalism and also to some installation art. The less there is there, the more you think and the more it makes you think. So when you've got little there on stage, you're
yeah,
going to look at everything and think deeply about everything,
yeah,
which of course is exactly what Beckett wants you to do.
of course.
So
That was
it
another
is the
thing that
obvious outcome.
in the silence, for some reason, there's quite a lot of audience coughing going on, which must have been a
Yeah.
bit disruptive to the rhythm
Mm.
and that's not me saying, in how in classical music, again, people frown on such things, but it did actually, in some ways, break the potential focus that Gary was establishing. But you just that's the fact is you're in a room with human beings. Someone's going to get a ticklish throat.
Yeah, yeah.
These things happen, and you just right, you just he rode with it and we rode with it. That's fine. Now of course some people are saying, well, 55 minutes, what's the fuss, what's the buzz, and because to go with it all, we had there was security on duty, which you don't normally get that way at the theatre.
Really?
Low key run
Dear,
by
oh
Ian,
dear.
very low key, but it was there.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you might have your bag checked as you went in, etc. I had to say who I was, had to prove who I was. I still wouldn't be allowed in even because I couldn't find my
Really?
tickets.
Well,
So
it's easier to get
it
into
took
Trumps
5 minutes
America.
to it took 5 minutes to for the person who's been reviewing at those shows for as I have at
Wow.
the theatre since 1989 to be
And I
allowed in.
know how easily annoyed you are, Charles, at
I
this sort
behaved,
of
Graham.
treatment.
I'm so used to this
Mm,
happening. The do you know who I
mm,
am
mm.
scenario. Interestingly, on Tuesday night, Sting was in the audience with his wife Trudy Styler,
Wow.
and also this week in the audience, Mick Herron, of course, wrote Slow Horses, the stories that
I've
are
met
in the
Mick
series. Now, and
briefly.
obviously,
Yeah.
there'll be plenty more people to spot in the audience in the five
Mm.
weeks that the show's running, and that's all part of it as well, and that's fine. I mean, it is exciting on that level for York to be at the centre of the theatre world. Not often the case. Not often the case.
Yeah.
Very
Also,
much the case
Gary
these days.
Oldman is a very exciting actor. How many great performances on TV and film has he given over the years?
Yeah.
How many things has he made way better because he's brilliant?
Yeah,
So it's mega exciting.
yeah.
He's one of the few people who deserves that sort of treatment, I think.
Mm. And I'm told that he stays around after the show, signing autographs for those who want them, and he stays a long time doing that on some occasions. So, all that side of it, which is kind of part of the modern experience of doing these things, going along with all that. Still, I'm afraid I still haven't got an interview confirmed with him.
Oh,
Do
really?
you
You're
know who is?
trying?
Do you
That's
know
good.
who? Yes, yes, but I've just been told who is doing an interview with him.
Who? Who?
Nick Ahad of the Yorkshire Post. He's got the interview.
I'm not surprised. Nick's actually written a play. That's like a step up on us.
Graham, I can't believe you've just suggested that Nick Ahad is more significant as
Oh, no,
than
no, no,
me
no.
in the world.
Charles, I did not say
I can't
that.
believe
But
Graham. How could he possibly?
in
What
the way the
do you mean he's on?
pecking
What do you
order
mean he's on
works,
Radio
Charles, you
Four?
know.
What do you mean he
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
presents on
There you
Radio
go.
Four? What do you talk? What?
Yeah.
What do you mean he's written
Yeah,
for Emmerdale? What
yeah,
are you
but
saying,
two
Graham?
big egos, two big egos of small car is better than Nick had on Radio Force.
Really,
Obvious. Anyway,
really,
yeah,
yeah. I think front rows. Look, so anyway, I'm still trying to get an interview with
good,
with
good.
Gary, and he hasn't apparently yet ruled it out. But the only one he's definitely done is with Nick Ahad, so in the Yorkshire Post. So
Tell him
I
that
feel my
your
ego
mate's.
has been
Tell
crushed.
him your mate is totally working class. That might help.
Absolutely. So, Graham, just to remind everybody, it's running till May the 17th. And listen,
Mm.
technically sold out, but technically not sold out. Go online, check each day to see if any tickets are available. Sometimes it may be only one, sometimes it's four, because there have been returns, etc. So don't give up on the possibility. Just a bit of persistence, and you may yet get the chance to see it. So
Ultimately, Charles, would you say that the Hollywood star has avoided the banana peel, the banana
I
skin
did
slip
say that
up?
he didn't slip on the banana skin. I did use that image in
Good,
the
good.
review.
It's good to
But do you
hear.
want my bet? Do you want my best image?
Yeah, yeah.
So I do
Go,
it as a
go for it.
question: Has Gary Oldman got it taped in
Oh,
performing in his first theatre role in 45 years in Krapp's last tape? Sadly,
well,
Celestine
it's
didn't know the
yeah,
expression
yeah,
got it taped, so that one
yeah.
completely was wasted on her. But
Oh
I
dear.
think I think you know what it means, and she
Of
now most
course.
certainly does know what it means. And to
Yeah.
which the answer was yes,
But
he had got it taped, and I do think it was
yeah,
worthwhile.
I think you're right. But it's basically Oldman plays old man, is what it is.
Graham, strange enough, you've quoted another line from my review. Anyway, that's enough
This
big
this is
egos.
this is why this
Doing the big
show
ego
works
stuff.
so well.
Right. I want to, Graham. I want you to talk about the Murder Capital,
Oh
played
yeah.
live in Leeds. A band who, so I don't have any music by Murder Capital, but they're one of those bands that have its quiet significance, quietly growing, becoming better known overall. And maybe they are part of this new age of punk and post-punk that we've triumphed actually quite regularly here on Two Big Egos, where we've talked a lot about post-punk bands, not least bands from Leeds that are in that movement. So now, where does the Murder Capital fit into that? Where did you see them in Leeds?
Well, I saw him obviously at the Broodnell Social
Yeah,
Club in Leeds. Fantastic
yeah.
venue. And they're a five-piece band from Dublin, formed in 2018, led by the intense and charismatic James McGovern.
Mm,
And they were totally post-punk when they started. Sort of like like Interpol, a little bit Joy Division, a little bit Block Party, etc., etc. But
mm.
as they've kept on going, they're now on the third album, and Blindness came out in February, and
Yes,
they've started to expand their palette, almost as if they've been influenced by Fontaines DC,
I was going
their
to ask you
mates
exactly
from
that
Dublin,
question. Mm,
who've also expanded their palette. So they've stopped just being a scratchy, angular post-punk band, and they've got a wider musical frame of reference. They're getting a bit looser, although they're still
mm,
very dramatic live.
mm.
Live, they're still pretty much like the Doors would be live if the Doors wanted to be Joy Division. So they don't sound like the Doors, but there's a real sense of musical drama between the musicians and in the sound of the band on stage. So in the Broodnell, they came across absolutely brilliant. They had such presence on stage. But first of all, I thought the songs still aren't quite strong enough. They've
Yeah.
started to write some proper songs that are actually memorable tunes,
Mm,
as opposed to great guitar riffs. But they still haven't written songs like Fontaine's DC now,
mm.
right, which are properly good songs.
Yes.
So they really need to like step that up if they really want to be following in the footsteps of Fontaine's DC. But they also made me remember that right now, because the music critics have no influence on the music world really, because there are no trends and fashions outside the massive sellers in the streaming world, it's made me aware that, or rather, it made me not notice that really we're in a golden era for new young punk bands and post-punk bands. So
Mm.
right now you got bands like Viagra Boys, Lambrini Girls, Amyl and the Sniffers, Panic Shack from Wales.
Yep.
You've got Wet Leg, who are basically a bit punky.
Mm.
And you got Sprints, who are like grunge punk.
Mm.
You got Fat Dog, who are sort of like strange Frank Goes to Hollywood punk band.
Mm.
And this all started with the Idols and Sleaford Mods about 7 years ago. And there's now loads of bands who sell out venues across Britain who get played in BBC6 Music a lot. And it's a goddamn trend. It's a complete important trend, and they're all socially aware. They're all a little bit political. They're all a bit angry and in your face. These aren't people pretending to be the Sex Pistols or the Clash or the Jam or anything from the 1990s.
Graham,
These are like
should
young.
Uncut
These are
Magazine
young
be?
bands who are important.
But
These
should
these are
Uncut
important
Magazine,
bands.
should Mojo be paying more attention to these
Oh
bands?
yeah, big time. But they're full of guys our age who still love the 60s and 70s.
Mm.
So they're not. But they should do because these are bands that matter and who are rather good.
I mean, there'll be a fanzine world that might write about these bands, but actually, in terms of a magazine for contemporary acts, because we don't have New Musical Express, we don't have Sound, we don't have
We have it
Magazine,
online. Enemy exists online, but it's all news and
yeah,
chitter chatter.
and it's much shorter articles than it used to be as well.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub production.